Always great having my next guest on the show. It's Kyle Daukaus, who's got another big fight, this time June the 16th at CFFC 120 against Robert Gidron. Kyle, how are you?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, always great talking to you, my man. Before we get into the fight talk, we got to talk about some important stuff. And no, I'm not talking about the Celtics beating the Sixers. You're going to be a boy dad, man. Tell
I
me,
am.
how exciting this is when you found out.
Yeah. So we found out obviously when we found out the gender and stuff last week when we shared it on Sunday. But it was kind of a long process. My wife and I had a little trouble in the beginning, so it was kind of a long, kind of stressful process for us. Um, didn't really share with a lot of people that she was pregnant at the time. We just told like my parents, her parents, and her grandparents. That's about it. Kept it on the down low for a little bit, and then we hit. I think you can do the gender now at 10 weeks, and we wait until 12 weeks to actually do it. And yeah, now it's official. So
How did you come up with the idea to do the gender reveal? It looked like what did you're hitting a piñata? Do I have that right?
they have like these pipes now that like are like chalk things that shoot when you twist them or whatever. I've seen a bunch of people do it. We were originally going to have my dog, who was a Great Dane. He's huge. We were going to have him eat a cake and then take pictures and have the middle of the cake be the color of the gender. But unfortunately, we couldn't get the cake done in time when we found out the gender. So we just quick did an Amazon thing and just did the explosive chalk confetti kind of things.
That's awesome, man. What were
Yeah.
the nerves like before finding out the gender? Were you more nervous to find
Uh,
that out, or are you more nervous like walking down to get into a fist fight?
no, I was definitely more nervous to find out the gender. I was teasing my wife the whole time, saying it's going to be a girl. I was like, I just had a feeling it was going to be a girl, and she did too. And then it turned out to be a boy. And it's funny because my dad obviously had two boys, and then later on had a girl. My brother had a boy first. Now he has a girl, and now I'm having a boy first too. So it's pretty cool. Little family thing going on.
Have you guys picked out a name yet?
No, we're discussing names right now at the moment, but we have a couple in mind. But I don't think we're going to tell anybody until time gets closer.
Yeah, that's very cool, man. I couldn't be any happier for you. My wife and I,
Thank you.
we're trying to have our first child ourselves,
Mhm.
and it's been a struggle, so
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, God's timing, when it happens, it happens. But that was very cool. I love the post. Love seeing that, man. Great things in
thank
your
you.
personal life.
We'll say,
Let's transition here. We'll talk about your fighting career. Obviously, man,
yeah.
everyone that's been following you recently knows you got to the highest of levels fighting in the UFC. You're no longer there. How difficult was that to I guess really just swallow and understand that I'm no longer a fighter in the UFC. I got to work my way back in.
Yeah, I mean, at the time that it had happened, the kind of build up prior to the Anders fight, on your last fight or two on your contract, you always ask them if you want to renegotiate to try to get more fights, to stay there, obviously. But I had lost the fight prior to the Leadze as well. So I knew I had kind of had a feeling that like I was going to have to fight my contract out and see where we go from there. We asked Mick what was going on. He said we're just going to fight out the contract. I said, okay, that's fine. Like I had in the back of my mind, like if I lose the fight, then I'm out. So that was part of kind of the mentality going into it. Was like I can't really lose this fight because then I'll lose, being in the UFC or whatnot. The fight happened. I lost the fight. Uh, After that, it was kind of I don't know if it was like super like low or whatever. Um, it sucks, it really does. It sucks when you're not there, but in a way, there's obviously positives that come out of it. Um, I'm back with CFFC now, so it's not really like a big thing. Obviously, the pay is a little bit different. They also had kept me on like the short notice list prior to releasing me, and they offered me to fight at 205 against Tyson Pedro in Australia on like 2 weeks notice. And I was like, I thought about it. Um, my manager was like, "Yo, they're going to offer you a new contract. It's a lot more money." And the contract was very good. The money was very good, but to me, for some reason, it felt kind of like a bribe more than anything. It felt like you're taking this fight uh, as like a favor for us, so we're not going to cut you. And I was like, when I thought about it at the exact time I got the call to fight him, I was like, all right, cool. Like I'll fight him. we'll see how this goes. I had to fly to Australia and whatnot. Talk to my wife. She kind of didn't like the way the contract and everything sounded as well. After we discussed it, we said it was a good fight and whatnot. But again, I'm moving up in weight against the guy on 12 days notice. I think it was, and something just didn't sit right in my stomach with it. After we waited, 2 or 3 days, I was like, just give me a day or two. We're gonna figure everything out and whatnot. And then actually that week, I think it was, we had an appointment with the doctor for a procedure for the baby, to actually try and actually have the first baby. So I wasn't going to be there as well. I think when the process, like when I needed to be there, I wasn't going to be there for the baby to happen. So I was like, nah. I was like, all right. Kind of sat back, relaxed, kind of took a little time to think, and I was like, you know what, family's more important than this fighting thing is. I know it's a very big decision, and a lot of guys would have jumped on the opportunity to increase their pay, get a new fight contract, and be still in the UFC. But for some reason, for me, it just didn't feel right in my stomach to do it. So I chose the other way to go and to say no. And I'll tell you, not even 30 minutes later, the thing came up on Twitter that I was released. And I was like, damn, like it's quick. The whole thing is quick. Like every decision you make with the company is quick. But yeah, it is what it is. I have to move on. I mean, in a way, it sounds stupid. When I first started fighting, everything was UFC. It was UFC this, UFC that, blah, blah, blah. I've made it there. And I obviously would like to stay there, obviously. But that's not the way that my life is taking a path right now. My fighting career, I need to make money for my family now, and I need to make money as a living. And to be honest, the money I was getting on my contracts wasn't going to be good enough for a living that I have. And there are other opportunities now fighting wise, like Bellator, PFL, one that I can jump into and actually, potentially make a living with fighting, as opposed to fighting, 12, 13 times before I actually make the amount of money that I'll be making to support my whole family. So, yeah, it was a tough decision on my part and the family's part and everything like that. But that's all past me now. And I'm just strictly focused on this fight for CFFC, trying to get as many fights as I can get in now and move on to, Bellator, PFL, or wherever I'll be going.
Have you talked to anybody in the media about this Tyson Pedro, fight offering, or is this the first time you're
No, this is the
actually?
first time this is the first, you were the first person that I'm talking to about it. It was, yeah, I think it was like 12 days before or so. They had called me asking me, and that whole thing came out and whatnot. And then Bukowskis was the guy who actually took the fight, and he beat him. And the Tyson came back and was like, I felt sick this camp or whatnot. He got sick during the fight week. And I was like, you know what? I probably could have beaten him that night, but it's not in the cards. So it is what it is. Yeah, but that was it. They offered me on 12 days, 13 days notice, if that, because I had to fly out, I think, like a whole week before just to get acclimated to the time difference and stuff. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, one thing's clear, Kyle. You're absolutely 100%. Your skill level is UFC worthy. You could be fighting there, obviously, if you wanted to. I guess the tricky thing for someone that's in your situation, you talk about, you said, it's UFC, it's UFC. When you're a young fighter and you're coming up, the UFC is the pinnacle. That's where you want to be, because that's where if you look at it, the best fighters as a whole are in the UFC. Do you feel like that? Competing at the highest of level, competing against the best fighters is as important as providing for your family? Like, can you because you talked about it a little bit, can you kind of go on a little bit about just the differences and how you, I guess, measure those?
Yeah, so for me, I mean, obviously, when I first started, it was always the UFC. Like the UFC was like you said, it's the pinnacle of the sport. It's the top tier of the sport. When you tell people that you fight, you don't say, like, it's awkward to say, yeah, I just fight professionally, but it's even better to say, I fight for the UFC, because then they're like, oh, like Conor McGregor, and they're like, yeah, and they're like, oh, okay, I know that. That's pretty cool. So you fight on TV? They're like, yeah, I fought on TV. I fought multiple times on TV. Blah blah blah, and it's better in a way for people to have that, because they think that's kind of all they see. These other promotions that they have don't get as much, I think, exposure, but now it's kind of increasing because the UFC is putting cards on every like other week or so. People are now coming out saying that like they would prefer less fights as opposed to more fights now. But also, if you do that, if you do less fights, then more guys are going to get cut. But I tell the guys at the gym now, I was like, listen, dude, like you can have the UFC as your main goal, and that's great. Like it would be great for me to still be in the UFC and whatnot. And who knows? By this time next year, I could be back there. But your money and your family and everything like that should come first, I believe. When I didn't have the baby on the way, money wasn't as big of a goal for me. And money, like my mentality on money is that it comes and goes. I'll get it, I'll spend it, and then it'll come back. Like I'll eventually, it just recycles pretty much. It's not really a big deal to me. But now with this baby on the way, it's changed my whole mindset that like I have to make money. I have to support my family. I have to support the baby. I have to support my wife. Even though my wife makes very good money as a teacher, I still need to put my part in here. I can't have her being, the breadwinner the whole time. We need to split it and support everything. And the money I was making with the UFC is great for guys that are, like I was. I didn't have a family. I don't have a family coming up. I just have a wife. Or if like you're by yourself, like it's good enough money to make rent and be by yourself. I saw that Doumbé from the PFL signing said that he's making a ridiculous amount of money for PFL, and the UFC offered him 20 and 20. So it's difficult. I think it's difficult for people to see past the money. When I first got into the UFC, I was like, all right, money's money. I'm just here to fight the best, and that's kind of all I am. Like that's still my mentality in a way, but also now I need to make money. So I'm not just gonna, sign a contract to fight a guy for 10 and 10, or sign a contract to fight a guy for 12 and 12, or a 4-fight deal that's only going to max out at $25,000. You have to make money on the way. But you also have to be smart about it too, and make sure you have money saved up. So yeah, a lot of these guys just see UFC as a pinnacle of the sport, and they don't really see like the behind the scenes stuff that me being a UFC fighter prior, I've seen as far as the pay and whatnot.
When you look at the middleweights that are outside of the UFC, like a Bellator, PFL, how do you
Yeah.
feel your skill set right now stacks up with those guys? Do you feel like you could go in there and compete with the best of the best outside of the UFC?
Yeah, I know I can. I know anywhere else that I go that I can compete with everybody. It's no different. To be honest, like it's no different to fight guys to fight middleweights in Bellator as to fight middleweights in the UFC. Now, do I think the better fighters are in the UFC? I mean, the top 5, top 10 maybe, but other than that, outside of that, everybody's pretty much equal. But yeah, I think that anybody that I can fight is, obviously I hold everybody that I fight to a high standard, and I'm always grateful to have good opponents and fight good guys. But I feel like wherever I go, I'll be able to compete with anybody that's there, and eventually, reach the top ranks. We kind of spoke to Bellator about what we're going to try to do, and right now, they kind of want us to get some wins. So I feel like if I get 1 or 2 wins, or 2 or 3 wins maybe, that I'll be signed to them next. But at the moment right now, I have to strictly just kind of focus on CFFC and just get a couple of wins here and there.
Yeah, you literally just segued into what I was going to ask you next.
Yeah,
Obviously, you're focused on the CFFC fight and Robert next, right? But I
yeah,
was going to ask,
of course.
who's next? Who's the leader of the clubhouse for, what big promotion you could sign for? So obviously, you're leaning towards Bellator. It seems like.
Yeah.
Do you feel like with where you're at right now in your career, Kyle, that like a fire has been lit right underneath you?
I mean, a little bit. Some guys would be like, "Oh no, like it is what it is," but I feel like I have more motivation now with everything going on in my life. Like, I just got married. We're having a kid now. Like, I think this is the top part of like the motivational, fighting kind of era for me. I'm also 30 years old, so I'm still kind of young. A lot of these champions and top guys don't really reach the top until they're mid 30s, early to mid 30s. So I think I'm still jumping into my prime right now. I don't think I've been anywhere near my prime at all. So I think this is like a good thing that's happened, being released by the UFC, and just, taking a step back and finding that motivation again that I had before I was even there.
I remember when I first watched you fight with a big group of people. We were at this big campground in the middle of summer. You fought Brendan Allen. There was a bunch of people
Yeah.
there. We had a big screen, a fire. Everyone was going nuts watching the fights, and you fought him tooth and nail, man. That was such an
Yeah.
awesome fight. And you look what he's doing now. What do you think of that? Like, how far do you think Brendan can go? And when you look at what you did against him, does that just kind of show you just the level that that you can compete at?
I mean, yeah, I took that fight against him on 10 days notice and did that. So if I had a full camp, that would just show you like where my talent is in the game. Um, but he's obviously on the up and up now. Comes from a good camp. He's fought, I mean, who do you fight last? The Brazilian guy.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, he's doing good and whatnot. But I mean, you know, I gave it to him on 10 days notice. So if I had a full camp, who's to say I wouldn't be in a spot where he is right now?
What did you learn from that Anders loss? Is there something in particular that you can point towards?
No, I mean, people like I've heard through the grapevine that everybody's like, "Oh, you came back too soon from your loss to the Leeds, blah blah blah." Like, it's my choice to come back or whatnot. Like, if I want to come back and fight, I want to come back and fight. If I don't, then I don't. But I would never step foot into that cage knowing that I wasn't ready or knowing that I wasn't prepared. Um, I had a terrible and absolutely atrocious performance in that fight, and it really like irritates me to even think about it or like watch it. I've only watched the fight once, and it was when I got back to the actual like my Airbnb that was there that night. When I got back to that the house, we watched it then. That was it. I haven't watched it since because I'm so disgusted and disappointed with myself in the way that it went that I never want to experience like that kind of performance again. And I don't plan on it. I felt like I was prepared. Um, I just felt like I switched too much of my game plan up for it, and that I shouldn't have really started away from what got me to the dance in the first place. And I feel like I did. But it is what it is. I can't take it back or anything like that. I just kind of move forward and just focus on what I did wrong in that fight, and just train hard and get back to where I was before.
You're still a little over a month out from this June 16th fight. How has
Yeah,
camp been for you getting ready for Robert?
it's been good. To be honest with you, I've had about 4 different opponents for this fight. They offered me Rafael Carvalho. He didn't respond. I had a couple other like random guys, and then this is also the first time I'm coming out with this. Maki Pitolo. I don't know if you know him, the Hawaiian kid. Um, they had said yes to fight me, and I said yes. And then within like 2 or 3 days passed, and I texted my manager and I was like, "What's going on with the contract?" He calls me the following day, and he's like, "Pitolo's out." And I said, "What happened?" And he said, they don't want to fight you in front of your home crowd in your home arena. I'm like, come on, dude. Like, it's just a fight. Like, what's the big deal? And then they said that they took the fight with the intention of me not taking it, which also doesn't make any sense either. So you say yes, but because you think I'm going to say no, but you didn't. So kind of pissed your pants and ran. But I mean, it is what it is. So they offered me like 2 other guys, and I said, listen, like, I'm tired of getting these guys that are just saying no. So just give me a guy that says yes, and then send me a contract with his name, and that's it. Like, make sure he says yes and he signs the contract first, and I'll fight. And Robert signed, and Robert, he's a good quality opponent. His record doesn't show it, but the guy is very talented. He's very good. He's very explosive. He fought Josh
Travis,
Fremd.
yeah, Josh Friend,
He fought
Travis Davis, Kyle Crutchmer.
Yeah, yeah, he's fought these guys that are actually known, and he actually beat Fremd, which is a surprise. At middleweight, he beat Fremd. So this guy's tough. This guy's fought guys that that are in the UFC and in Bellator and top names in the sport. So yeah, it's a good fight. It's a tough fight, and I'm thankful that he took it. But this whole thing with like guys not taking fights, it doesn't change. If it's from the regional scene or the UFC, it's never going to change. These guys are going to say yes one thing, and then they say yes, and then you say no, or the guy's just not going to answer. Like, no matter where you fight in the world, it's always going to be very tough to find opponents.
Gidron looks the part too. The guy is jacked.
Yeah,
Let's talk about that fight a little bit. Just
I don't really think he. I don't really think he cuts a lot of weight at all. Um, but yeah, he's very, very, very big, very muscular, obviously, very explosive. He's very explosive off of the ground. So I think it'll be kind of like the Kevin Holland matchup that I had prior, as far as like style wise, minus the jiu-jitsu black belt. But like Holland was very explosive throughout our fight, and he's a very explosive fighter. He can get off the ground very quickly, and he can stand up very quickly. And Robert does the same. Robert's very quick off of his back to stand up. His striking is very good. He's very crisp on his striking as well. He's well rounded, and it's good because it makes me better because I don't have to solely focus on one thing. I have to worry about everything.
If there were odds for this fight, I'm sure there are somewhere the closer that you get, but I mean, I have to imagine you'd just be a massive, massive favorite.
Yeah, I would think so.
I mean, do you feel that pressure? Like you got to win this fight, right? You can't, something can't happen. You can't drop this one. You got to go in there and win, and probably look impressive doing so. Do you feel that pressure?
Yeah, of course. The most pressure I feel is the pressure I put on myself. But I know going into this fight that it's not that it's like an easy fight by any means, but I have to go in there and make it look easy. I have to go in there and make sure the fight ends in the first round. And the longer the fight goes, the worse that I feel like my performance it would be. Like I have to finish the fight within the first round, if not the first round, the first half of the second round, and I'll be satisfied with that. Anything less than that, I'll be annoyed, and I'll probably be disappointed in my performance.
Must be nice too. Your brother's fighting Khalil Roundtree on June the 10th, so you guys are in camp together. How is he looking?
He's looking good. We actually did a test cut a while back, and he did it. He made the weight. Everything was good. We were good to go for that. We just wanted to make sure that everything was okay, like him cutting the weight and whatnot. But they tried to get him to fight in March at 205. And he was like, and we were like, what are you talking? Like, he's never made the cut before. They give him a top opponent who they want him to fight? Uzdemir. They want him to fight Uzdemir in March in England. And I was like, no, like, we need to make sure we can make weight first. We can take some time off, make sure we can make weight, let your body heal and everything heal, and then get to it. And so whatever he was about 12 weeks prior to this fight, he made the weight cut. Everything was good. It was good to go, and kind of rehydrated, and then he sparred like he would have fought. So it was good. Yeah, his performance is very good. He's looking very thin right now just because he's lost all that weight. But he's walking around like about 230 right now, and he's looking really good in the gym. He's very strong. He's very quick, and he's still kept that power, which is a surprise. That like his punches are still so hard based off of the fact that he's losing all that weight.
I was gonna ask too, man. When I first heard that he was dropping a light heavyweight, I was like, huh? I didn't even think that he could make it to 205. What was Chris at his heaviest? What was the biggest he would get?
Prior to the UFC, he was around 290, I think. I think he almost hit 300. And like one of, I forget what it was, a couple of his fights, he actually had to cut to make 265. But again, he's not like a Derek Lewis or these other guys who actually have to cut, like a Tuivasa or anybody like that. He's kind of just one of these guys that just carries a lot of weight. Like he doesn't he wasn't big on like dieting. Like these guys have to diet to make 265. My brother just walks around and just eats whatever he wants. But now that he's dieting and stuff like that, he looks 10 times as better. And I think 205 is his division that he needs to be in the first place.
Man, I love that Roundtree fight with Dustin Jacoby.
Yeah.
I think Jacoby actually won that one. When you look at this matchup with Chris, ultimately, how does this play out? If you look at it objectively, how do you think that this fight actually shakes out?
I think my brother's going to get the win. Obviously, Khalil is a very, very, very good striker, a very talented striker. You don't really see him grapple too much. He has good amount of takedown defense and whatnot. But my brother, being the person that he is, needs to go in there and not be the guy who's like, all right, I'm going to strike with the striker. He needs to mix it up. He needs to show that he's got a bit of a skill set as opposed to just striking the whole time. We want him to mix it up. Obviously, we want him to not to give too much away or whatnot, but take away from the Jacoby fight a little bit and pressure a good amount of times and look for the takedowns and kind of work his jiu-jitsu now. He doesn't have a lot of jiu-jitsu really showcased at all. I think he had one CFFC fight where like he tried to leg lock the guy the whole fight, and that was about it. My brother like showed in his whole jiu-jitsu, but that's how guys are. Guys get to the favor of of knocking people out and knocking people senseless, and they fall in love with that and forget, what their skill set is. Because in the gym, the guy's he's you would think he was a world champ based off of his grappling and clinch work and everything against the cage and whatnot. And then his striking on top of that is that much better. But when he goes out there, he solely seems like he's just a striker. But I think this fight, he's going to mix that very well. We have a heavyweight, a really, really good heavyweight, Ryan Appleby, who's an amateur right now. That's he wrestled, I think, D1 or D2, and he's here helping us out training. He also trains at the gym and fights out of the gym. So he's been a very, very good teammate to have and help out. And any work that we can get in with him has been helping. And my brother is looking phenomenal for this fight.
I have to imagine that you'll be in his corner June 10th and he'll be in yours June 16th, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, this is the third time that we're fighting back-to-back weeks. So I fought Kevin Holland, and he fought Shamil. Or actually, I think he fought Shamil first, and then I fought Holland. And then our last fights prior, the ones we both lost, when he fought Rosenstrike and I fought Anders, we fought back-to-back weeks as well. And this is another fight that we're fighting back-to-back weeks. So it's good to have us both in camp at the same time. Obviously, I don't want to be flying to Vancouver the week before or wherever his fight's in Vancouver, but it is what it is. It's part of the job. I'm one of his teammates, and I have to be there for him, and I have to, help him out, but also I have to train as well. So I can't I can't solely focus too much on him that fight week, even though it is his fight week. I'll still be training my ass off.
So Vancouver to Atlantic City, New Jersey. That's where you'll be
Yep.
fighting. CFFC 120, June 16th. It'll be on UFC Fight Pass. Robert Gidron, we talked a little bit about it earlier, Kyle, but ultimately, what's your prediction here? How are you getting your hand raised? Does it get out of the first round?
I don't think it does. I think I'll take him down and strangle him within the first, 3 minutes of the fight.
And as long as you're healthy, what's the plans for moving forward here in this year? Do you want to get back in there as soon as possible, or are you looking to maybe just get a full camp in and make sure you get another solid win?
No, as long as I have a good quality opponent that I'm fine with fighting on whatever week's notice it is, then I'll fight and I'll stay busy. I have to stay active and just keep winning. I'm back to that regional scene, obviously, not being with the UFC and whatnot, but it's a good kind of restart that I'll have, and hopefully by the end of this year I'll be signed to one of these other organizations, and I'll be starting to make my move there.
I have no doubt that will actually be the case, my man. Kyle, it's always great talking to you. Again, the Darce Night, Kyle Daukaus back in action, June 16th, CFFC 120 against Robert Gidron. Before we do sign off, as always, I want to give you the floor, man. Tell people where they can follow you on social media. If you have anything to plug, any sponsors to thank, the floor is yours.
Yeah, Instagram is just Kyle Daukaus. Twitter is just Kyle Daukaus. Fuel Hunt is one of my sponsors, who my brother and I have kind of teamed up with. They're a local business here that's like a clothing and just like hard work, motivational, very motivational company that we have teamed up with. We have rash guards and shorts made. The Blue Collar Brawlers is our kind of like logo that we have. We're coming out with a new one for my fight week, so that's another exciting thing that's coming out. Primal Nutrition is another supplement company or supplement store that's here local in Philly that my buddy I train with, Matt Hill and Chris Hill. They run that, so I'm very thankful for them. And that's about it for right now. So any other sponsors, I'll make sure I give them a shout out. But thank you everybody at the gym for all the support, and always like these guys have been with me from the very beginning. I'm very thankful for everybody that's helping me out, and just looking forward to June 16th.